So again, welcome this evening. We are going to be talking about College Rugby 101. I'm Karen Fong Donoghue. I am the owner and founder of the Rugby Edge. We're a college advising company that specializes in helping student athletes who want to continue to study and play in college. So a little special thanks to Arbor Bridge, who is our preferred test prep company, and also Bushi, who does a lot of awesome promotional kind of gifts. If you're looking for apparel, team apparel, things like that, they are a wonderful company. So many thanks to them for all of their years of support. A little bit about me, I'm not going to read through everything here, but obviously, I've been in the rugby community for many, many years, first starting out as a player and then moving on as a referee. And now I've really moved on from being an active referee on the field to being an educator. So I do teach referee courses around the country. I was just out in Ohio a couple months ago. I'll be doing one in Colorado here this weekend. So hopefully I'll get a chance, if I don't see you out there on a rugby pitch, if you're out hoping to get certified as a referee, I'll see you out there as well. As a part of the rugby community, I've been in it for a very long time. And then as a professional college consultant, working with families through the entire college search, application, recruitment, and admission process. I have been doing that since 2009. So it has been quite a long time that I've been doing this, but I certainly love it. And I'm excited to be here tonight to go over this with you. So a little bit about the Rugby Edge, and of course you can go to our website, ruggersedge.com, and find out a little bit more about what we do. But the main goal here, our bread and butter, we're a college advising firm that really focuses on rugby student athletes. Now, of course, in the past, we certainly do work with students, with siblings and friends that are non-rugby students, but our kind of main focus here is obviously rugby, because it is still a fairly new collegiate sport. You compare it to kind of the historical traditional college sports like football and hockey and volleyball and things like that. Rugby is still relatively new. So I'm sure all of you that are out there have a lot of questions, because college rugby is still, definitely changing all the time and updating, which is great, but it can be hard to keep track of that. And that's part of my job, is to make sure that I really do have, a finger on the pulse of what's going on in college rugby, so that I can then share it with you. So what we do, the main thing is that we do personalized advising. So we work with families one-on-one. We do group seminars. So things like this, which are kind of open to everyone, as well as doing specific private ones for teams, for groups and things like that. And then obviously we also work with some college programs as well to give them a little bit of consulting on how they can, increase their recruitment or increase, their promotion and things to students and families. Okay, so this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to first kind of talk about the college rugby landscape and a little bit of touching on what the fall 2021 update is. I did this webinar last year when we were, still pretty, deep in all of the pandemic stuff. So there was a lot of updates there. So we're going to update kind of from that year till now. What are some things that we've seen? We're going to talk a little bit about rugby scholarship, because that's always a big question for many families. We'll talk about some critical steps for players. And then obviously we'll have that Q&A portion. Okay, so this is a slide that has not changed since the beginning of the year. Now, part of this is because, quite honestly, there has been so much change in overall with USA Rugby. If you didn't know, USA Rugby went through a bankruptcy last year. So there's been a lot of just reorganization in general with the national office, with the way that they're running college, all those sorts of things. So the numbers that I have typically come from them, and they are still kind of catching up on numbers. So this number will actually probably change by the time I redo this for January 22. But for now, I don't expect that these numbers are going to change immensely. So roughly, it's going to stay about the same. The total number of men's teams is going to be somewhere in that 540, 550 range. And then the number of women's teams around that 360 range. What you're going to see as we get into some later slides, you will see potentially some teams that move into different divisions, but it doesn't change the total number of teams that are, still out there available to you. The main thing I tell a lot of students, if you're out there and you're like, I've been playing rugby, in high school, and I love it, and I just want to play. Absolutely. I want you to look at those numbers and understand you absolutely can, right? Like, there is going to be a place for you. And I 100% believe that you can absolutely play, at any of these divisions, depending on what it is you're looking for and what your skill set, what your talent level, the things you're looking for. So I certainly think if there are players out there that are, potentially thinking, can I play? I'm going to answer that with yes, you absolutely can. So I want you to definitely, take a look at that, that number and know that you can find a place for you in there. So these are currently the divisions, a couple changes that, obviously on the men's side, you still have the D1A, the D1AA, the D2, and the small college. On the women's side, you have the D1 Elite, although that might have changed this year to D1A instead of D1 Elite for the women. I think that's still changing. There's the NCAA group, so that's NYRA. They also have a D1, a D2, and small college. So not a ton of change there, and I try to, you can see a little bit of the way that I would say they're comparable in terms of like the competition level from the men to the women. Okay. And let's see, go to this next one. So this is what happened last year. And what was interesting is when this was first announced, honestly, none of us really knew what was going to happen because obviously last year, no one had a season. So it was really tough to kind of see, what was actually going to happen when kind of the rubber hit the road, right? So this is really the first fall season where you are seeing teams that are competing in these different divisions, where you did have some teams move from, basically they moved from what was originally maybe USA Rugby divisions to these different organization models. So you have the NCR, which is the National College Rugby Organization, which originally was it used to be NSCRO, for those of you who followed along. That used to stand for National Small College. So they kind of removed that, changed their little acronym there. And so now they encompass a lot more different programs. CRAA is the College Rugby Association of America. And then you also have American College Rugby Association, that's ACR. And then on the women's side, you actually also have ACRA. It ends up being a big old alphabet soup. So the main thing, look, the change from fall 2020 till now, the main thing, if you're a family out there looking at this stuff and like, oh, I don't know what division to look at, honestly, what I would do is don't even look at it. Because more than likely there's going to be another reorganization at some point. I actually rarely look at what division, or are they playing under CRAA or are they playing at ACR? Like, it doesn't matter to me, right? I actually would prefer to look at who they're playing week to week, in their conference, in their league that they're playing, relatively close to home, because it doesn't necessarily worry me or concern me what they're doing in the postseason, because I'd rather kind of see a little bit more of, what does their competition level look like during their full fall season versus, what happens in a tournament season or things like that. So again, this is really for you just to be aware that these are the changes that happen. But if I'm working with a family, someone says, look, I really want to play top rugby, I don't discount small colleges, or I don't discount Division II, especially if there are some really competitive D2 programs that maybe are the perfect fit for that one student. So I'd really advise you to basically take a look at this, but then scrap it. Really don't worry about that. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit, actually, we talked about this just a second ago, but examples of those college teams and where do they normally fall? So the big one with this slide is just taking a note of, it doesn't really matter the size of the school, especially on the men's side, but you also see it on the women's side as well, that even if the college itself is typically an NCAA Division II, Division III, something like that, the men's team or the women's rugby team can be something else entirely. And that's because typically you can choose which division you want to be in. So sometimes you'll see a fairly small school like Mount St. Mary's, for the men, they are going to compete in, D1AA, or they'll move up to D1A, and that is going to be their choice, even if the school's NCAA program is something different. So again, this is another one of those slides I want you to be aware of, but then almost kind of scrap it. Like, don't even worry about it. You can take a look so you see, okay, who else would they compete against? But to me, this is not something I would look at to decide, what should be on my college list. There should be other factors that are in mind when you're making your college list. So here is the women's NCAA programs. As you can see, there is a lot of growth. So I know that there are some young ladies that are on this call this evening. It's really exciting for you. Right now, we are seeing a lot of new programs being announced. I put those in red. So just a few of those were just announced this year. And then you even have some that are being announced, like Newbury College is being announced for next year. So, that growth that we were, a few years ago, we're talking about that sprint to 40 and wanting it to, women's rugby to move on from being an emerging sport to being a full NCAA sport, having their own championship. We are well on our way. So, I'll definitely stay posted, stay close to our Facebook page and all those sorts of things. And, as we learn new things, we will certainly post that. So this is really exciting. And you're going to see, continue to see more growth. And, the young women that are out there, I certainly hope that you decide to follow through and check in on some of these new programs. Okay, and speaking of new programs, I included some of those NCAA ones, but some other exciting things. These were the ones that were announced this year as well. So you can see kind of a variety of programs. You have Christian Brothers. They're basically have varsity club programs for women's and men's, and we'll talk about what that means. You also have University of Rio Grande. You've got Willing University that's announced a new varsity women's program for next year. So it's exciting from where I sit to see, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago, there were certainly not even this many teams that were varsity or varsity club. And there's just more and more every year, which is exciting. I think the colleges are starting to, see what kind of diversity that they get, or the difference in students that they're able to enroll when they do add a really cool inclusive sport like rugby to their campus. Okay, I'm going to talk about this one, about the differences between varsity club, and then which one is better. And then I will make sure to check to see if there are any questions. So number one, varsity programs. There is still a very, very small percentage that are varsity. And the main thing you're looking for here is that they are 100% supported by the university under intercollegiate athletics. So the main thing you're going to look for, because there are certainly some programs that designate themselves varsity, and then there's always the question of, is this one really varsity? The way you would really find out is you're going to go to that school's athletics page, and under their drop down where it says sports, you're going to see if men's rugby or women's rugby is listed. If it's not, it's potentially might be something else. Like you'll see, for example, that Christian Brothers program, if you go to their athletics website, you're going to see where it says sports and then it says non-varsity clubs, but they're still somewhat supported by the school, just not the same as varsity. So the way I would kind of describe it is, the varsity kind of has all the full amenities that you would associate with things like soccer or a comparable sport, right? So you have, paid coaches and facilities and weightlifting, facilities and strength and conditioner trainers and nutritionists and those sorts of things. Varsity club might have some of those things, but not all, right? So they might have a paid coach, but maybe they don't have access to a rugby specific facility. They're going to share fields with, say, lacrosse. Not that that's bad, but that's different, right? But that's still a bit of a step up from, say, club, which is the traditional college rugby, kind of model, which is, for example, I played on a club team at UC Davis, and, I follow their Instagram and I see they're still practicing on A Street Field, which is an intramural field. It's a great field, but it is the same one. It is where, intramural, field hockey or something, like they would also practice there. So it's not a designated field just for, just for rugby, right? We're going to share it with other, with other sports and things like that. So that's just one of the little things you'll notice, that typically with varsity, you're going to get a lot more of the things because you're supported by the school. Varsity club is kind of in between. And then club is definitely more student driven, student run. A lot more of the players that are on club typically are walk-ons, literally like walking around a campus and seeing a club table and saying, oh, I'd like to try rugby. So the rugby IQ for club programs tends to be a bit lower. I would say, less than 50% of those players have ever touched a rugby ball. Varsity club, you're going to be a little bit over 50%. You're maybe looking at 60%, something like that, where you have more more players that have played before. And then varsity programs, 99% of those players, especially if it's a varsity level program that's been around for a long time, if they're recruiting, the majority of those players, they all would have played in high school and possibly played in high school at a high level. So that's something to think about as well. When you're trying to think of, which one's better, it really is going to be a question of what's better for you, right? So when you're thinking about, oh, when I picture myself in college, are you thinking about, I want to be on a team where I might not start right away, that I'm going to train for a couple of years before I even make a starting spot? Or do I want to be on a team where I theoretically could start right away as a freshman? All right, people. So we just talked about the different kinds of programs. If you've seen my presentation, this slide is probably really, really familiar. And the reason is this hasn't changed. I cannot tell you how many families I basically repeat this slide to, because I think it's really, really important for student athletes to think through, what do you really want in a college program? I did a presentation for our national college counseling professional group, and I actually did it in conjunction with a good friend of mine. And he was a former athletic recruiter for a super selective football program, so Division I football program. And he said one of the questions he always asked when he was looking at prospects was, does this person want to just like, live that life? Like, do they really want to do it, or they want to just talk about living that life? So what I mean by that is when there's a player that says, I want to do high performance, right? I really want to do rugby 20 to 25 hours a week. I'm really honest with them about saying, do you really want to live that life, or does it just sound really cool? Because 25 hours a week of rugby, along with actually still going to classes, doing homework, doing papers, having some free time to yourself or hanging out with friends, it doesn't really leave a lot of that extra time. So while it may sound cool and you're watching videos and seeing that kind of stuff online, it does not come without a lot of hard work. So, players, I really want you to think about, what level you're looking at in a rugby program in college, because it must align with what you truly in your heart are looking for, and not about, what you think will look cool to your friends or, stuff like that, right? It's got to be, okay, when I go to college, I'm thinking about this major, I'm thinking about this type of atmosphere at the school, and for rugby, I'm looking for this. So, you kind of want to think about that. So when I kind of say some teams are high performance, a lot of this all boils down to time commitment. So 20 to 25 hours. And don't forget, what I'm talking about is not necessarily all the time you have on the field. This might include things like team meetings. This might include travel time. If you're on a team that travels a lot, you're thinking about, how do you get your studying and your papers done if you're leaving every Friday and not getting back till late Sunday? So certainly time management is a really, really big deal for those players that are playing kind of on the higher end of things. Competitive, again, maybe 12 to 15 hours, if not a little bit more, and that might range. And then some social programs. Again, this is not bad. It's just, that's what you're going to commit. Social programs can be great, a lot of fun, a lot of great rugby, but social, meaning, it's mainly there for enjoyment. You're going to practice a couple days a week, you're going to play on Saturday, and that's great. A few players might kind of take it to the next level and train a little bit more than everyone else, but the vast majority are not committing into that 20 to 25 hour range. So really think about, what kind of a life are you looking to live when you're in college, and make sure that aligns, with kind of the overall picture of college, because rugby is only one piece of it. The other part is going to be, you're going to college to earn a degree, to learn, learn the skills you need for your future career. So you do want to make sure that those match up. Okay, so let's talk about scholarship, because we already got that question. So let's touch on this a little bit here, and don't worry, I will take a break here and see if there's other questions. So, what can rugby do for you? I've been doing this presentation or similar version of this and updating it every year. So what's exciting is you are seeing more and more scholarships. You are seeing players that are able to go to a college, and they're getting a really substantial discount on the total cost. And a lot of it is due to rugby, which is awesome. So the main thing you're going to look at, so these are 3 different types of scholarships that you can get as a rugby player. The first one's going to be rugby scholarship. So these are going to be things that you're going to get typically, again, from a varsity program. So if rugby scholarship is a big deal to you, you're not going to be looking at clubs. Clubs would not have access to this. So you're looking at money that is given to an athlete strictly based on their performance, on their skill, on what they can bring to that program. The second piece is merit scholarship. So this is not related to your athletics, but it's going to be what you're doing in the classroom. So they're going to be things like your GPA, your classes, test scores if you have them, leadership. All of those things get taken into account from a merit scholarship standpoint, and those are given from the institution themselves. Now you're going to notice there's a lot more dollar signs, because majority of my athletes that do go to a college and have a big chunk of their cost discounted, it's from the merit scholarship side. It is not from the rugby scholarship side. So please be aware, for those students out there, if scholarship is a big deal to you, the way you're going to get the most money to go to college is what you do in the classroom, not what you do out on the pitch. Okay. The third way, alternate scholarships are also available, and this will come in the form of things like some of the teams have like alumni groups. They might have some small scholarships that they offer in addition to some of the other things. And some of these schools will offer things that are called basically, you know, here on the West, we have something called Western Undergraduate Exchange. So those are just kind of partnerships between neighboring states that you can go to college at a neighboring state and you'll get a discounted tuition. Normally those are based off of your merit, but for some rugby programs, they are able to leverage your rugby to basically get you that WUI discount or get you that academic common market discount, so that you are, you know, paying the least amount possible, right? Because everyone knows college is expensive, so they're going to try to make it doable for you. The last thing that rugby can do for you, which does, you know, if we can piece it all together, that'd be great, right? If you can stack all those scholarships together and you get this last part, admission support, that makes, you know, obviously your job as a student athlete and your life as a parent, you know, much easier. Things make it much easier for you. So admission support, there's two different types. So I want you to be really clear on this, what it is you're looking for. So the first piece is admission influence. So that is where a program, and again, usually, and I would say almost exclusively, varsity programs have admission influence. And what that means is they can literally say, okay, every single year we get 6 spots or we get 10 spots that we're able, as long as we, you know, as long as admissions has signed off on them, and they'll do something called a pre-read for you. The admission says this player is good to go. They can help get you accepted. So this is, you know, obviously a big deal for some of those programs that are really, really selective, right? That is a really big bonus for, you know, for a rugby program to be able to say, we can influence your application. The second way is just having input. So input is not the same. Okay, input is just saying, look, we're going to do a little bit of an interview. We can pre-read, we can do all these things, and then we can advocate for you. We can put in a good word. So the way I would describe this is a little bit like, let's say you were applying for a job and you had a friend who worked at the same place. If they go ahead and tell the boss, hey, I know Johnny, like he's a really good friend. I think he'd be great at working here. You know, you might get a bump over, you know, whoever else just applies off the street, right? It's always nice to have someone kind of on the inside saying something nice for you, but it's not a guarantee, right? That boss will eventually make the decision to hire on their own, just like admissions will make their own decisions. But at the end of the day, you know, having someone on campus that is advocating for you, you know, can be really helpful. I know sometimes the scholarship piece is a really big deal. The thing I always do want to make sure you all are doing is prioritizing, right? So making sure maybe after this presentation, you sit down and say, well, what is our priority, right? Is our priority location? Is our priority the major? Is the priority the rugby team? Is the priority the cost? Typically, once you know what's at the top, that is going to influence what the list looks like. And they're not all going to be the same, right? That you can't have, for example, you know, really big brand name, rare, but, you know, really big brand name university, a really great rugby program with athletic scholarship or something. You may not get all of those things. You might get 2 out of the 3, but it's rare to get all of them. So figure out what is kind of at the top of your priority list as you're going into making your list of where you want to research, where you want to, you know, talk to coaches, all those sorts of things. Okay, so prioritizing is really, really big deal. Okay, so for example, this is a varsity program at the top. This is American International College. Their total cost of attendance is $36,900. If you get their merit, you know, their presidential scholarship, which is all based on merit, you get $20,000 a year. So this is even before athletic scholarship, is you'd be looking at around 16.9, which is pretty good. The average cost for an in-state public university is around 20,000. So, if your merit scholarship is strong enough, you are already looking at a pretty significant chunk right there. So here's Boise State. You can kind of read right there. If you get that WUI discount, that Western Undergraduate Exchange discount, minimum, you need a 375 and a 25 ACT. You're going to discount 12,886. So now you're looking at that total cost. So again, there's different ways that that programs, and if you don't know how much colleges cost, you definitely should look at each university's net price calculator, because typically what you think a college is going to cost may not actually be what it is. So definitely make sure to make a little spreadsheet, put your colleges in there, go ahead and do the net price calculator by putting in all of your information, and you can get a sense of, okay, at these different colleges, this is what we might be expecting to pay before we even get to academic scholarships, athletic scholarships, things like that. And then this is typically what would happen if you can stack scholarships. So if you're Johnny Rugby on the left, these are some of your stats. You're applying to University of Rugby, which has a $40,000 a year cost. You get a merit scholarship, you piece it together with a rugby scholarship, and now your cost of attendance is down from 40,000 to 15,000. And typically this is the type of kind of breakdown of my students that I've worked with, where scholarship is a really big deal and it's a priority to their family, is you're looking for colleges where we can stack and piece together different types of scholarships to get this total cost down. I've had those questions in the past of, is there a full ride? There are student athletes I have seen and worked with that have gone to university for free. Is it just because of rugby? Absolutely not. It is a part of the equation, but it is not the whole equation. Typically, these are very strong students that are paired with a very strong rugby player, and that you're able to, find a way to combine different scholarships. Okay, so critical steps. First piece, we're going to talk about academic, because again, as we just talked about, merit scholarship is going to be the biggest thing that college coaches are looking for, and also from admissions, right? So also scholarship, all those sorts of things. So I almost do not care what you do in the rugby field. The first thing I am going to look for is the academic pieces. Okay. So number one, grades. The higher, the better. Okay. And I know the students, if you're on here, you're listening, you probably hear this a gazillion times from your parents, from your teachers, from your counselors, all that stuff. However, I want to really put in perspective the reason grades are important. So from a college coach's perspective, they have to keep you eligible. So, what better way to kind of take a guess of how you're going to do in college than see how you're doing in high school. So if you're really, really struggling to get through your classes in high school, it's a greater risk for them to take you, because you may not be eligible to play in a regular season game. You might not be able to, be eligible to make it to playoffs. A lot of the teams, a lot of the divisions, they do have minimum eligibility. So, the better your grades are, the stronger you're making a case for a coach that you're going to be easy to maintain, right? If you make the team, they're not going to have to worry about you, right? Also, it shows a little bit of, without really stating it flat out, but obviously you're more organized, possibly. You are a hard worker, you know how to pay attention, you know how to manage your time, all of those things, come into play. So, I think it's worth it for you to think about that. Let's see. So rigorous curriculum. So this is more tied with, obviously the way admissions does look. So if your high school offers rigorous curriculum, so like IB curriculum, AP curriculum, honors, things like that, most colleges do want to see that you've taken advantage of some of those things. This does not mean you need to go out and sign up for every single super hard class out there, but think about the things that you're interested in, and hopefully you want to take a few classes at the very least to get you college ready. The last thing I'm going to talk about briefly is just testing. So the SAT or the ACT, although I will make a note that many colleges are test optional or test blind. So the UCs have gone test blind, for example. So UCLA, UC Berkeley, those types of schools, they're test blind, meaning even if you have a test, they will not see it. That's good for some, students out there who are like, oh my gosh, I hate testing. But what that does do is it's going to put a lot more focus on the other stuff, right? It is going to put more weight in your grades, in your curriculum, in your essays and things like that. So this isn't a free pass. It doesn't mean, oh great, like now everyone's going to get into UCLA. It does mean everything else must also look strong, if not stronger than before. And then with test optional, most colleges through at least this year have remained test optional. I think if you're on the younger side, if you're a sophomore or freshman, we'll keep an eye on it and see if the schools remain test optional, and see how that goes. So overall, right, the main thing I want you to walk away from here, the stronger your academic profile, the more merit money you're going to get and the more support from coaches. And this is just a slide you can kind of see, testing wise, you're really only going to submit a score at this point if your scores are within the 50 percentile of these schools. If they're not, I wouldn't submit them. Okay, so for example, if you were applying this year to Dartmouth, for example, and you scored a 29 on the ACT, you probably would not submit that score, right? But you would submit it to UConn, you would submit it to University of Maryland. So you can kind of pick and choose which schools you want to submit a score if you have it. And for those schools, it will help you, right? It will absolutely add value to your application if your test scores are within the range of what typical students getting accepted are. So a couple things from the athletic side, main things that every coach is looking for. Okay, so good character and coachability. Now, during COVID, it was really hard because there really wasn't much to review. It was really hard. Coaches weren't obviously traveling to tournaments or anything like that. But most teams are kind of back, back in season. You're seeing more film nowadays, right? Things like that. Coaches, especially here in the US, have a pretty tight-knit community. So, it's not to say that if a certain coach was at one tournament and then they saw you, that they wouldn't talk to other coaches. So good character to me comes out in a couple different ways. Typically, if someone's going to watch you at a tournament, you're going to see how well, or if they see your film, how well do you support other players on your team? If you're not starting right away, are you still supporting the team? Are you someone that, yells at the referee the whole time, right? And has a bad, has bad leadership on the field. So good character is really important. Proper communication with coaches. So I really, really, really stress that recruiting is, in the rugby sense, is not about, here's, let me fill out your form online and then come recruit me. You really have to think about building a relationship. So you want to have, a good chunk of time dedicated to getting to know a program and letting the program get to know you. So, typically the junior year is the most important. However, if you want to start contacting coaches early, you can. I remind players all the time, you can be friendly with coaches, but they're not your friends. So don't, even if it seems really comfortable, I would not start texting them all the time. I would not, send them private messages on Instagram. Proper communication should be through email with your parents copied on it. Okay, so especially when it comes to recruitment, that is the professional way to do it. I would not do anything over private messenger and all those sorts of things. Okay, so you want to be able to track your communication. And again, that communication should be professional. Dear coach so-and-so, hello, my name is Johnny Rugby. It shouldn't be like, like you're messaging a friend, right? Have a rugby resume. If you're on the young side, freshman, sophomore, even right now, if you're an early junior, download that rugby resume and start building it. Even if it's early on, even just to start having a list of everything you've done, because a lot of players will get to junior year and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know. I don't know what tournament that was. I don't know what I did. Here's a link to film. Put it all together in one place. That's going to be a really, really good thing to be able to show a coach. Game film is still really critical, especially because a lot of programs still cannot host camps. Depending on the college or university they're at, they may not be allowing, any kind of outside folks to come onto campus. So film. I never used to say it was critical. It is critical now. So especially if you're looking at programs that are varsity, that recruit, that have athletic scholarship dollars, things like that, you need to get film. And this is not, you need drone footage, and professionalized and all those sorts of things. Even if it's mom or dad or brother or sister with an iPhone up on a bleacher filming, we need to get some stuff. Okay. So the more film you have, the better. I look at it like same with camps and tournaments. if you're able to get more kind of bites at the apple, you can show more about your skills, the better, right? If you only have one game or one tournament, and let's say it wasn't great, you don't want that to be the only thing you can show a coach, right? So you want to have more chances to show that, yeah, you have some breakaway speed. Okay, you've got some great long passes. You, are really good at rucking. You're really good at, lineouts. Certain games you may not, if you're a wing, maybe you don't even get the ball, right? That's happened. So you want to have more film to show what you can really do. So same with camps and tournaments. You are seeing some more things that are coming up in the winter. I know Cal Berkeley is just announced a winter camp. So, take a look at some of your programs. We have a camp page on our Rutgers Edge page, so you can see if any places you're interested in are going to host a winter camp, as well as obviously summer. And then just really make sure you reflect on what you want. So kind of back to that one of those first slides where you talked about, put those blinders on and think about, what kind of a rugby program do I want to be a part of when I'm in college? And what kind of a coach do I want to play for? Do I want a coach that yells a lot on the sidelines? Do I want someone that kind of sits back? These are all things that, as you get further and further in the process, if you're able to visit, if you're able to watch one of their games, you can see, how do the players interact with each other? How do they interact with the coaches? All those sorts of things are really helpful in deciding, what is going to be the best fit for you. So here are just some resources. We have a playbook here that is available for sale. And then some other resources I recommend. The FISC Guide to Colleges is really wonderful, as well as Colleges That Change Lives by Lauren Pope. If you're going to do testing, certainly recommend getting some prep done. So ACT Academy or Khan Academy, that's free, or also reach out to our friends at Arbor Bridge, and they can always help you with some test prep, or if you need some diagnostics to kind of see which test is best. They're wonderful to connect with. And also make sure to connect with us. So we have a newsletter, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, although I should delete that because I never post anything there. And then let us help you. So we'll always offer a free 30-minute consultation, kind of see where you're at, see if we can help you, and then kind of go from there. So our scholarship amounts year on year each have to be applied for annually. Oh, good question. So typically the merit scholarships, and it's kind of like anything, you'd want to read the fine print. So typically with merit scholarships, they should be offered year to year, as long as the student meets minimum requirements. So it might say, okay, you've won the presidential scholarship of $20,000. That's renewed every year as long as your student meets a 3.5 GPA every year, something like that. So that's how that would happen. And then athletic scholarship, usually, depending on what is agreed upon in the offer, it would be renewed every year. Again, this is dependent on, if the student is ineligible, right, and flunks out of the school, obviously they may not be eligible to receive that athletic scholarship money. So I feel like so many of these questions, I'll end up saying it depends, but it should be, you should be able to renew it as long as you've met those minimums. And that's a really good question, is let's say you've got a child that does get an offer, you should ask, right? What are the requirements for my child to keep the scholarship over the 4 years? Okay. Really good question here. Best social media platform for athletes to post on. I am of the kind of philosophy, whatever's easy, whatever's easy for you to get stuff out. And it's not necessarily a media platform, because then I think you're putting the work on the coaches. So what I think is really easy, for example, is, YouTube, right? Like I put these webinars on YouTube and then I put them on my website, but YouTube's really easy. So if you have your own, Johnny Rugby YouTube page, and then every time you get film, you upload that, and then you can just send that film just to the coaches of programs you're interested in. There you go. That's what's going to be easy. I know some students really do like to put it on Instagram because it's just fun. You can certainly do that, but I wouldn't just post it and leave it, because that's you expecting coaches to spend their time sifting through social media to find you. So let's say you do have a really awesome clip. Awesome, post it, but then you need to personally send it to those coaches directly and say, hey, I just wanted to check in. Still really interested in your program. Here's some recent clips from a game from this last weekend. I posted it here, and you can send it to them. Because generally, coaches at these programs, they're really busy, right? Not only are they doing this recruitment piece, but they're also day to day. They are coaching, they're coming up with game plans, they're having to, figure out travel and everything else, right? So the last thing you want to do is kind of leave it to them to do the work. You want to make this easy. Okay. Your job as a prospective student athlete is to make the process easy for these college coaches to bring you on, right? If they're having to work harder than you, it's not going to work out for you. I want you to make this easy for them. Oh, you want a transcript? Great. Here it is. Oh, you want film? Great. Here it is, right? If they ask for something, send it. Do not wait 3 months and go, oh, I just haven't checked my email in a long time. That's your job. Okay. Not your parents' job. It is a student athlete's job at this point to follow through on this process. Okay. So I'm really putting it on you. Okay. I've got some more questions here. And then, yes, there was a question about, it's going to be posting. Yes, we will definitely post this as a recording. So don't worry, I'll send that out. We just answered this one. Our current club team doesn't have rugby. What can we do to prepare besides training on their own after football season's over? It's a really good question. Okay, so if you don't really have that access, a couple of things that I think you're already kind of touching on what I would recommend. I mean, obviously training on your own. If you can, obviously the general training. And what I mean by that is making sure it's sports specific. I know a lot of players are like, I'm running like a mile every other day. I'm like, well, what does that have to do with rugby, right? When do you just run a mile? So you want to make sure it is sports specific. You're doing sprint workouts, you're doing high intensity training, you're doing, plyometrics, whatever, things like that, right? So make it as live as possible. And then probably you're looking at ways to play on an all-star team or regional team, to play in some tournaments that will come up in the spring. So things like ERA, things like Atlantis, if you're a female, ARPTC, Northeast Academy. I mean, all of these are different kinds of academy programs where you can get more playtime, maybe more film, right? Because we want more bites at that apple. And then obviously with those rep side teams going to more tournaments and getting more playtime. Hopefully that answers your question. Where will the link to watch this presentation posted? It will be posted if you go to our website under what we do, you'll see a link for online content. So it will be posted there in the next week or so. Yeah, great. That was another question. I will share it out as soon as I am able to get it online. So usually in about a week, it will go out and you guys will find it on that online content. All right. So we're nearing the end of the hour. I don't know if I've answered all of your questions, but I certainly can stick around for a couple more minutes. If there's a few more questions, I will answer one quick thing that I often get asked about. That is whether or not players need to specialize and just play rugby. Absolutely not. Especially when I go back to the idea of getting more film. If we go back to that player that really didn't have a chance to play a lot of rugby, I would also have on your film the ability to show other sports you play. So let's say you wrestle, let's say you play soccer, let's say you play basketball. Those are not, obviously it's not rugby, but there's a lot of transferable skills. So you can certainly send some of that too. If I'm a college coach, at the very least, I get to see how athletic you are. I see that you know how to recognize space. I can see that you have good footwork, you have good closing speed. Some of those things will come up in other sports too. So certainly don't feel like, okay, I want to play college rugby. That's the only sport I have to play. It actually makes you a fairly weak athlete. I think it'd be better if you have the time and you enjoy it, do rugby along with the other sports you do enjoy. It'll actually make you a more recruitable athlete. And then just overall, it helps with a lot of different things, right? So, certainly that's a question I get asked about a lot. The second one I was going to touch on, I often get questions about playing internationally. I actually in the last couple of years have had more than a few students go and play for varsity university programs in Canada, as well as now more students looking at schools in New Zealand, in the UK, in Scotland, in Ireland, things like that. I will say that typically the way rugby is organized overseas is different than here. So if that's a question, I mean, certainly talk to me about it. It is just going to be different. The way their application admission process is handled is certainly different than the way we handle it here. Quite honestly, I feel like it's a little bit easier. They're a little more straightforward about the way that they apply. The main thing that I bring up to students who are looking at overseas colleges or universities is typically you're applying directly into your major. So it's great for those students that say, I absolutely always wanted to do engineering, or I'm going to be pre-med or something like that. If you don't know, it's a little bit tougher because you do go right into a track. They don't really do the general ed thing like most colleges do here in the US. Last question. This is a good one. And then I will kind of let you all go because I know it's been a long evening here. The question is, do you provide a service to help find students best placement at college and the best deal available for a fee? So yeah, so what we do as a company is we work with student athletes and help advise through that whole process. So obviously it depends on the family's priorities. Some families' priorities are, you know, we want to kind of develop a college list that's targeting the most selective colleges that our child can get into. Maybe rugby can provide a bit of a bump and help advocate for them a little bit more. Some are really going to be looking more at scholarship, and you know, our budget for college is around $20,000. Can we, you know, look at some more colleges where we think we can predict that this student most likely will get something close to that. So yes, so and I think if you have questions like that to you and the other families that are on this call, definitely fill out. You'll see on the website, and I'll send this out as well, on the website where it's Rutgers Edge under Contact Us, there is an initial consultation form you can fill out, and then we'll go ahead and book that call for you. I will make a note, if you want to do that call, I am not doing any of those calls until after November 1st, because currently I am pretty packed working with my seniors, finishing up applications for early deadlines, which is November 1st. So I'm kind of prioritizing those folks, helping them through that process. And then I will take on kind of all those new consultations with new families. So yeah, if you have other questions about that, please feel free to reach out. You know, I am here to help. My email address is karen@ruggersedge.com. And then again, like I said, I will post this up on the online content. There's lots of other webinars we've done as well. So if there's other questions, you know, go ahead and check that too. You might see that, you know, we've done some highlights from different programs. We've gone through some NCAA stuff for young women. So you can see 2 programs on there about that. So if you are a young lady looking at college rugby, please feel free to look at that. And last but not least, save the date. Monday, November 15th at 6 Mountain Time. We're going to be doing a program highlight with Aquinas College, Adrian College, and Christian Brothers University, which are the 3 new varsity programs. This will be with the men's coaches, and then we're hoping to do another for some new women's programs as well in the coming months. So please stay tuned, check out that event calendar. If there are no more questions, I will let you all go for the evening. I really appreciate your time joining me. And again, reach out if you have any questions. We're here for you. And thanks so much. Bye.